just looking at this full audience, sold out house, and wondering how we're going to get everybody in with the heads of state tomorrow, but we're looking forward to having them. I'm Fred Kempe. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council, and welcome to Three Seas Hub here in Davos. We are technically in what in Washington is called the think tank sector, and I think we're very strong in that sector, but I hate the term think tank. And I think in this context of Three Seas, it's worth saying this, because we're an action tank, we're a do tank. Thinking is a nice first step, but then after that you have to get deals done, you have to get work done, you have to complete Europe, and that's what the Three Seas is about. So on behalf of the Atlantic Council and Poland's Development Bank, BGK, thank you for joining us at Three Seas Hub for this panel discussion on building the Three Seas as a partner for Ukraine's European future. I not only want to thank our partners at BJK, particularly Beata and Pavel, but also the leaders of the Atlantic Council who put this together. So Ian Brzezinski at the top of the list, Denise Forstruber, Emma Nix, and Lisa Hamel. So thank you so much for everything you've done to make this beautiful house possible. And you're going to sit in a lot of rooms where you're not going to see a view like this. So look out the window here, because there's a lot of downstairs rooms and that will be used during your time in Davos. The Three Seas initiative, after which this house is named, was launched in 2016 to accelerate the development of cross-border infrastructure in the region situated between the Baltic, Black, and Adriatic Seas. The intention was to build a north-south corridor for energy, for digital, for transportation, and anybody who has any question about the flaws and the demerits of the east-west corridor just has to think about February of 2022 and then what happened with Western Europe and its energy deliveries thereafter to know that it was a visionary concept. The Atlantic Council first wrote about it in 2014, calling it a north-south corridor and calling the paper Completing Europe. The initiative consists of 13 EU member states, which arguably constitute the most economically dynamic region in Europe. Together, they are leveraging the power of cross-border energy, transport, and digital links to drive economic growth, strengthen economic resilience, and even reinforce military security. This is an economic project, but it is of considerable geopolitical significance. Cross-border infrastructure is the underpinning of a single European market and the fulfillment of the vision of an undivided Europe, what President George H.W. Bush called completing Europe whole and free. The initiative, launched in 2016, has momentum. It features a unique investment fund to catalyze infrastructure projects. Just this last fall, the U.S. government announced it's supporting the fund with a $300 million investment facility. And also last fall, Greece, one of Europe's most vibrant economies, joined the initiative. The role of Three Seas in Europe is extremely relevant to the most important subject and one of the most urgent subject of any of the convenings here in Davos, and that's Ukraine's reconstruction and integration into a wider Europe after it prevails and wins in the unprovoked, illegal, illegitimate war waged by Russia on Ukraine. The more tightly embedded the Three Seas region is within a wider Europe, the more quickly and more resiliently can Ukraine be integrated into Europe. We often talk about doing something for Ukraine, trying to help Ukraine survive. We're doing something for ourselves, and Ukraine is doing it for us. And I think we have to keep reminding ourselves of that, because for Ukraine not to prevail, for Ukraine not to come into Europe, really has generational consequences that we don't want to consider. As a region that neighbors Ukraine, which, by the way, is a partner member of the initiative, the Three Seas Initiative, Three Seas countries bring to the table not only geographic connectivity, but also a shared history of repression and occupation from the Soviet era. Many of their lessons learned, both the successes and the mistakes, from their integration into the EU and remarkable economic development are applicable and will be applicable to Ukraine. And it is an understatement to say that many of the Three Seas states stand among the staunchest supporters of Ukraine's courageous effort to defeat Russia's brutal invasion. The Three Seas Initiative is all about completing a vision of Europe undivided, free, and secure. Without Ukraine fully integrated, Europe cannot be undivided, free, nor secure. To discuss how the Three Seas can contribute to and accelerate Ukraine's European future, we have an important and exciting discussion ahead of us. It will be led by Ambassador John Herbst. He's the Senior Director of the Eurasia Center, a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, and he leads our work on Ukraine across the Atlantic Council. Our panel speakers are a robust group. Former Estonian President Kersti Kaljulaid, she now leads the Kersti Kaljulaid Foundation, and as president hosted a groundbreaking Three Seas Summit and Business Forum. She's also a member of the Atlantic Council's International Advisory Board. Ukraine Deputy Minister of Economy and Development, Taras Kachka. Taras helped lead Kyiv's negotiation that led to the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement and is Ukraine's trade representative. And then Ms. Lenna Koszarny is the founding partner and chief executive officer at Horizon Capital. Horizon is the leading private equity firm in Ukraine with $1.5 billion in assets under management. Over the last 5 years, Horizon, it says in my notes, raised some $750 million in investments in Ukraine. Lenna just corrected this. It's actually $785 million and counting. And I hope she'll talk to a little bit about some of the, consider that amount of investment in this kind of period of time. It says a lot about the faith in Ukraine and Ukrainians. And then Dr. Mark Tomczuk, member of the Management Board, Polish Development Bank, BGK. Mark brings 2 decades of experience and top positions in Poland's state-owned and private banking sectors, and he'll have a lot of fascinating inputs as well. Before I turn over to John Herbst, let me just tell you that the programming will be shared on social media with the hashtag 3SeasHub, so hashtag 3SeasHub. And with that, we'll get started. This is on the record. And please tell everybody you meet about the Three Seas House, about the Three Seas Hub, and about Ukraine's relationship within it. John, over to you.
I was supposed to introduce the speakers, but Fred's done that, so thank you, Fred. And therefore, we don't need to delay the conversation. All right. President Kaljulaid will be joining us in a little bit. I had hoped to start with the geopolitics of this, but I'll leave that for her arrival. So let's go directly to the geoeconomics of this organization and Ukraine's relationship with it. So, let me see my notes here. Minister Kachka, what is the importance for Ukraine of the Three Seas Initiative? And what would membership for Ukraine in the Three Seas Initiative mean?
Yeah, so I think that we need to start from there is a perspective of the initiative and there is a perspective of reality. So that because I think that indeed the initiative at the beginning was rather oriented of north-south corridor and mostly for like EU framework of financing, like the cohesion funds and other infrastructural funds that can be used in order to promote this infrastructure. And we aspired from the very beginning, but the difference in status of other members of this initiative and Ukraine was actually the key obstacle for better joining. And it seems that Three Seas initiative now get new meaning for Ukraine and to itself as well, because of war, first of all. And I think that the front line, we have the actual military, so war front line in Ukraine, and also this geopolitical front line with Belarus and Russia to the north. I think it creates new understanding of infrastructure in general, and I think that it's not an easy task of not only for Ukraine for military things, but also from economic point of view, because now we have some very hot debates and protests on Ukrainian-Polish borders, and it is as well has this, let's say, geographic direction, yes, because of a lot of Polish transport companies lost an opportunity of being transitors or deliverers to Russia or to Belarus, like in Ukraine as well, because we treated ourselves as a west-east transit country, but now we are not transit country, so we are like dead-end country for eastern direction. So, and that's why, but at the same time, what we see is a new understanding of regional trade routes. In 2022, it was an emergency situation and emergency support from our neighbors on solidarity lanes, on market access, etc. But what we see now is that behind these emergency developments on trade, it appeared the new meaning of trade in the region. So now we see that in the south, so Romania investing in infrastructure for Ukrainian products going to third states, Bulgaria, Greece, we discussed it with Croatia, and of course Poland as well as our natural partner on trades to Baltic. So it means that war has changed a lot. We still have a lot of emergency requests to our partners, but within it, we already see this seed of new understanding of trade routes already growing up and into infrastructural initiatives. So that's why I think that now Three Seas has this natural foundation, not only artificial design as an initiative to improve infrastructure. So this is what Ukraine can bring to this initiative, and this is what we see in this initiative. We see our future, and we see that the regional trade is changing, and it brings a lot of meaning to Three Seas initiative as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Ms. Koszarny, you've been one of the most active investors in Ukraine over the last 30 years and elsewhere in Eastern Europe as well. What opportunities do you see for Ukraine as being part of the Three Seas Initiative, for Three Seas Initiative members about having Ukraine in, as we all talk about and plan for Ukraine's reconstruction after Moscow departs Ukraine?
Thank you very much, Ambassador Herbst, and thank you to everyone at Three Seas Initiative. Thank you to BGK for the invitation and Atlantic Council. And, you know, I think context is everything. And for us, you know, we started as a U.S. enterprise fund, as a U.S. government fund that was designed, one of 10 funds that received $2 billion, in our case, $150 million, focused on Ukraine and Moldova. Ambassador Herbst is on the board of Western Nest, and I'm an executive vice president. But we started from that context, and from that we created Horizon Capital, and in doing so, that $150 million has catalyzed $2.4 billion into the country. And from where we sit in Ukraine is looking beyond the media perception, beyond what is being reported. We are there on the ground and seeing that our company, our funds, the 26,000 individuals working in the companies that we back, that they are resilient, that they are pushing forward the economy, they are paying taxes. 60% of Ukraine's budget comes from private sector paying taxes, and that they're continuing to invest. You know, I'm going to just go on record and say this very boldly, that Ukraine and Moldova both must be part of Three Seas Initiative. It's not enough that they're a partner. They need to be invited as a participating state. This brings more to Three Seas Initiative, I would argue, than ultimately for Ukraine. Ukraine will persevere. Ukraine will emerge victorious. Folks were already planning for the reconstruction after World War II 2 years in advance. Folks are already planning for this. Folks are already looking at bankable projects. We just came from Ukraine House where, nice to see you, Rear Admiral Michael Hewitt, who we had a great panel about Ukraine's significance, strategic importance, about the fact that there's $4 to $12 trillion worth of rare earth minerals under Ukraine's black soil. It's not just the fact that Ukraine feeds 400 million people. Ukraine is on the forefront when it comes to rare earth minerals. Ukraine is EU's green energy partner. And I would argue that Three Seas, already in advance of victory, inviting Ukraine, and I would say Moldova as well, why not? Both are on the track to EU, is a bold step that will ultimately also ensure that Three Seas Initiative has a real seat at the reconstruction table. And I would make that argument very strongly, I hope, John, that I have, because you asked me about sectors. There's so many sectors. I mean, I'm chair of AmCham board, and the companies, the 600 companies who have invested $50 billion in the country, we just did a survey, wartime survey, December 2023. 85% have increased their revenue year on year from 2022 to 2023, have met or exceeded their targets. 87% have increased, have kept their employee base or increased it. 91% have met their investment program or significantly exceeded it. So those on the ground, whether in energy, whether in transport, in our field, we're investing heavily. We're the largest tech investor in the country. Tech is growing. We started investing, it was 110 million industry. It's almost 8 billion now. Ukraine has so much to offer. We're capitalizing on it, and we would urge the participating states of Three Seas Initiative to not hang back. You will be noticed now for stepping forward. Nobody will notice when the war is over. There's a lineup already starting. Nobody will notice. You Three Seas will be on the side with everybody else who is already planning for reconstruction. But now it makes news, and it's important, and it must be done.
Lenna, thank you very much. Mr. Tomchuk. First, I should mention that I believe BGK is partly helping put this together, and we thank you for your support for this.
Our pleasure.
Okay. Poland has been critical as Ukraine's fought Kremlin aggression. Poland's been extremely active in the Three Seas Initiative, including pushing for a larger role for Ukraine membership, inshallah. What do you think the advantage is for Three Seas of Ukrainian membership?
First of all, I fully agree that Ukraine must win this war, because the consequences for the future and for the next generations will be even hard to assess right now. And the role of Ukraine and Moldavia in Three Seas initiative is absolutely huge, in my opinion, because currently we are focused within the initiative on infrastructure investments, energy, new energy supplies, and also digital economy investments. All of this can be applied in Ukraine investment because, in my opinion, it's not only rebuilding, it's the modernization and building from the scratch, and it's a huge chance for Ukraine and for the region to make some kind of leapfrog in terms of new technologies, new infrastructure, modern infrastructure. Because this is not a this is obvious that this region, including Ukraine, has a gap comparing to Western Europe, and of course we can look at it as a gap, but we can look at as an opportunity, because the entire Western world is also in the point of change, especially in terms of energy. I mean the green energy, the energy for the cheap source of energy for the industry. They are asking about this all the time. We're talking about the region with, excluding Ukraine, 120 million people, and when we include Ukraine and Moldova, this is absolutely phenomenal potential that we have. And last but not least, this region is the fastest growing region within the European Union. So I can say that the opportunity is absolutely there. We need to focus on developing the region, and of course it's not something against European Union, because the strongest Three Seas region we're going to have, the strongest European Union will be in the future. So this is my conclusion.
Thank you. A quick follow-up, and I'll also take Lenna's view on this as well. What do you see as the prospects for Ukraine actually joining Three Seas?
I think we have a lot of in common. Of course, nobody knows how long this war will last. But I think Ukraine concentrate on investment and also concentrate on defense. This is obvious. But also we need to take this subject on the table. I mean the defense financing, because if we're going to have a stronger and more safest region, the situation of Ukraine, and also for investors, because investors very often asking, what is the risk? What is the risk of the region? What is the risk on investment in Ukraine? And ongoing war is not something that every investor is familiar. So it's a lot of questions also regarding investors from Poland to BGK. Okay, how you can mitigate or give us 100% of guarantee for my business, for my investment in Ukraine, and also those kind of questions are related with the region. So I think this is our common goal, to make a program, make a significant investment. I call it investment in peace, because military financing is not something that we used to discuss in the broader context. But I think now is the time to talk about this, and of course include banking sector, because right now we cannot observe many banks wants to finance military spendings or defense spendings. But at the same time, they have many challenges regarding energy transition, regarding new technologies, that they requires millions or billions of investments. So, and all these things happening at the same time. So I think this is a couple of points that we have here, that we can think together with Ukraine. And I think currently it's a lack of this discussion about it.
Thank you. I mean, there's no question that investment in Ukraine is sorely hindered by the war, and for that matter, the type of peace that's established will be essential to secure investment. But joining Three Seas is not the same thing as investors coming into Ukraine now. So, Lenna, following this point, and we'll give the minister a chance to speak on this too. Ukraine, from your point of view, it needs to see an end to the war to join, or no?
No, absolutely not. Ukraine should be joining at the Lithuanian summit, at the next summit. That's when Ukraine should be joining. And you mentioned about investors waiting and, the risks that are involved. Okay, let's take our example. I mean, we started fundraising in October 2021. We took a pause until May 2022. We looked at our companies and we saw that they were growing 30% median revenue growth across the companies, despite the fact that there was a full-fledged invasion. We then recommenced fundraising, it'll be 350 million that will hit in February. So we're at 328, we'll hit 350 by mid-February. And between us and Western NAS with 160, we've got $500 million to put to work in Ukraine right now. Now that $500 million multiplies into 5 billion. And how does it do that? Because it's, you know, when you put in the equity capital, which is the highest risk of all, when you have a quality partner like Horizon, like Western NAS, they commit that equity, they attract additional equity, which gives the basis to attract, you know, 50% debt against that. And all of a sudden, you know, with an equity component, you now have 100% of the project financed. You know, look at the discount rate in Ukraine, it's 14%. We just had a conversation with CapEx funding, financing is 3 to 5% for euros in Poland. Okay, there's an arbitrage opportunity for investing in on the ground, in the country, using capital from, you know, Western nations and putting it to work now in Ukraine. Folks can also think through natural currency hedges. If you are investing and you've got export component, it could be 100% export, it could be 70%, 50%, you're building in a natural currency hedge, which also drives returns. So, you know, I think there's a lot of creative people out there who are looking at this gap between what is happening on the ground and the perceived risk. You know, the perceived risk is much greater than the actual risk. And those people who understand that are making a lot of money now and will make a lot of money in the future. When you look at the Three Seas initiative, I would argue that, you know, for a Ukraine infrastructure project where it's 100% Ukraine country risk, you de-risk it with a Three Seas initiative, making it a Three Seas initiative project. If it is a joint Poland-Ukraine project, Romania-Ukraine project that benefits both countries, it is very bankable, very financeable, with the higher returns that are attached to the Ukraine component, but de-risked with the cost of capital from the Polish component. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of smart minds out there, and people are starting to see this. You know, I'm a co-organizer of Ukraine House. The house is packed. There's a lot of discussions on the side about this because people understand that Russia's objectives of taking the country will not be met. And you have what happens in Ukraine, ultimately, you've got a population that is fighting for the country, that is doing the heavy lifting, that needs resources to help themselves. And those resources include capital. And we need to do that. We need to do that not only for Ukraine, but for the self-interest of the investors who are contrarian and willing to do it.
Very successful saleswoman. Mr. Minister, I think Lenna just laid out a compelling case for smart investment in Ukraine right now. But again, what does Kiev want to see happen now with the Three Seas initiative? Lenna's talking about trying to get Ukraine in at the next meeting in Lithuania this year.
First of all, I think that that the difference between business and governments, that business is, let's say, more has more acumen, in terms of attracting investments, and this is good, and this is the case for Ukrainian economy. So I think that's what we highlight always, that a part of courage of the government, a part of the courage of armed forces, what was done by private business from the first day of aggression is still admired in us, and you know that this so 2023. Our economy grew by 5%, this is really incredible, and I think that what we want to from Three Seas is, I think that first of all is a clear message that reinforce our messages as well, and this message is really important for the region as well. So that that I think that the region of Three Seas has the same investment concern as Ukraine has. But in Ukraine, it is visible because it's like war in Ukraine, and people, all the world believes that it's dangerous to invest. But there are voices saying that, yeah, you know, that's it's not only Ukraine in danger, but all the region in danger. So you see that so security pressure is growing, and what will happen? And our example that economy didn't stop. Economy is attractive for investment, so it's you can grow in Ukraine and you can develop your business in Ukraine. So it resonates with what's going on in the region. So that's why I think that this is the message that we need to deliver in very precise manner, as Lenna did it, like for Ukraine, but the same for Poland, the same for Croatia, and the same for Romania. So because you see that in terms of infrastructure, so that this modernization of infrastructure in the region, so in forthcoming decades, will be almost complete. If we talk about energy, it will be like 100% replacement of existing energy. It will be either new generation or modernization of existing generation, new grids, storages, modern, right? Most modern, yeah. So and it requires something really profound trust to the region, because I think that the world has money, so that's either in IFIs, private money, it's okay. So the engineering solutions are there, but what will be important is an understanding of this long-term trust and predictability of the region. And this region is really interesting because it's not only war, because behind the war you have ITs, you have agriculture, you have production, you have industry, and etc. And what is important, even in defense industry, so we have a lot of co-production and to talk a project or co-production progress with neighboring states. So in the region, so that's why we have a lot to sell, and we can sell it to the world better by this initiative. So that's why I think that it was already so that in summit in Bucharest was really, in my opinion, was like transforming summit. So that there's like re-understanding of Three Seas initiative, and the next summit should be a really big pitch to the world about the region and about investments into infrastructure, and Ukraine could be a litmus case because it's the most brightest and maybe most radical element here. But what happens in Ukraine in terms of thinking about modernization of energy infrastructure also happens in everywhere in region, in Austria and Hungary, because they also think about modernization of energy with different emotions. It's different from Ukrainian emotions, but what happens in Ukraine also happens in the region. So that's why we believe that Ukraine helps and the region helps Ukraine, and Three Seas could be really initiative that can sell this biggest investment, let's say, pitch in the region for next generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tomchuk, you referred to already the problem of defense industry, and you thought that the Three Seas initiative might be a place where this can be worked on positively. Why don't you talk a little bit about the need for defense industry and the opportunities as well for it, and what's necessary to make it prosper?
First of all, when we look at the region, currently we have countries that are post-Soviet countries, and most of them use the Russian equipment. Maybe not 100%, but major of this equipment comes from that century. So they are still supporting the Russian industry because of parts, because of service, etc. Second of all, the safest and the strongest region, the Three Seas region we have, the safest Western Europe and world we get. Because when we go through the transition that the equipment and this challenge to finance this task will be completed, we're going to have 12, 13 countries that use NATO standard equipment, which is very important in terms of communication, in terms of cooperation, it's absolutely crucial. Plus, of course, the new modern technologies regarding the satellites, the navigations, which is current most modern technologies used during the war. So the issue, the challenge I see is, first of all, the financing of this need, because this is the experience that we go through, I think, first time on such a scale. Usually, before it was like, you know, G2G agreement, cash payment transaction, and that's it. Right now, and especially countries in the Three Seas region, including Ukraine and Moldavia, there's a lot of needs that need to be covered. I mean, the current needs, and defense is like on top. And I think we don't have right now mature mechanism and structure to finance this, including development banks, because it is very close to governments, and private sector. I mean, the commercial banks cannot handle it without development banks and cooperation with governments. So it is really big thing. But the time is now, I think, and there's no doubt about it. So we can observe right now that each of these countries managing this kind of modernization by themselves, and there is no regional program that can support it. So maybe this is something that we could talk and we could elaborate. Because in the let's say backstage discussions, this subject appears, and I think more and more banks and financial institutions asking how to do it at the same time, how to do it together with the commercial sector, because we have some banks, I mean the global banks, that have some experience in that, but they need to do this in the certain structure, which is not easy.
Thank you. I'll make one comment, stepping outside my role as moderator, before we come to President Kaljulaid. I think, and I'm glad you talked about this. I don't have any doubt that, one, to ensure Putin's defeat in Ukraine, the arms industry across the West has to greatly amp up production. But I would also add, if we were to simply amp up that production, that would be a signal to Moscow to get the hell out of Ukraine. The mere fact of doing that. Okay, now, President Kaljulaid, we're glad you're here. We've been going deep into economics. We need a little bit of bracing geopolitics. You've been one of the most eloquent voices on the dangers of Putin's revisionism, not just for Ukraine, where we see the horrors there, but for Europe more broadly. What, in your opinion, is the geopolitical significance of the Three Seas initiative, and how does that contribute not just to Europe's prosperity, but to Europe's security?
Yes, thank you indeed. There is no more urgent task than beating Putin in Ukraine, because if Putin is allowed to believe that he was fighting NATO in Ukraine and didn't exactly lose, this is really dangerous for all of us. So that said, I truly have always believed that Three Seas initiative, despite the fact that it has not quite gathered so much money in its fund as we initially probably all hoped, but I think the bright future is still ahead of us, did something very important for Three Seas countries. It created us as a region which saw itself as an identity. And we would very much welcome, as we did from the beginning, after all, Three Seas projects already can start in EU country and then extend themselves to the neighboring countries. This is already in the statutes. This region had no identity as an economic cluster. It now does. And this is very important. Economic Eastern European cluster growing faster than the rest of the Europe. And if I think of the future of Ukraine, well, I'm an optimist. I do believe that, painfully, slowly, but Ukraine will win this war. Ukraine will be even more dynamic, coming from an even lower base and having even more well-educated workforce, highly motivated. In addition, Ukraine will have a situation where they will have, well, far more than ever expected of a greenfield development opportunity. I mean, there will be huge needs for reconstruction of simple housing for people, and I know President Zelensky already has plans on how to develop that. Of course, Ukraine has not lost its capability as a big industrial power, and it has a future and sees itself as the future of high-tech, also military industrial producer in the future. But of course, two things are needed. One is the security guarantee provided by the victory over Putin, and the other is the economic security guarantee provided by Ukraine constantly moving closer to the European Union.
Thank you. Precise and to the point. All right. We have, I think, 12 minutes left. I wasn't told we'd have audience questions, but I think it might. What's that? Good. Over to you, Ian.
Thanks, John. I'm Ian Brzezinski from the Atlantic Council. And we're talking about Three Seas, which is all about cross-border infrastructure development. I'd be interested from the panel, what do they think would be the most timely and urgently needed cross-border projects further linking Ukraine to the countries of the Three Seas? Is it a pipeline? Is it a power line? Is it a digital line?
So, with your permission, I think that first of all we already have, so that the reality highlight this answer to this question. Yeah, so that first of all the electricity grids, so that Ukraine managed in 2022, 2023 to integrate fully into EU electricity markets in terms of technical interoperability and commercial as well. So, and before the massive shellings, we exported a lot of electricity to the EU. Now we are importing this electricity, and we definitely need to expand this connectivity. So this trade already happens. We have really more demand in both directions, because when we have so that now we have a lot of deficits because of shellings, Russian shellings, and we buy a lot, but as well, so when the situation is normalized, so our capacity to export as well, so that and to satisfy demand in the EU is also quite big. So that's why this is the first reply. Second big success of our of Three Seas is our connectivity with Romania in the Danube Delta, and because it's like very multi-dimensional projects of connectivity of railway, connectivity of river transport, and sea transport. So that's, and we had this quad, so Romania, Ukraine, the EU, and the United States on coordinating this mechanism, and we now see that it's this corridor creates of additionally more than up to 3 million tons of grains monthly, so export of up to 3 million ton export monthly. The biggest potential, but as well the biggest limitations we have is with Poland, so that we have the biggest number of cross-border border crossing points with Poland. But what we see now, and the reason for protest of drivers, is the capacity of border crossing points and how it's like ausfix the trade, because we buy a lot from the EU through the and deliver by road transport, a lot of pharmaceuticals, fuels, cars, everything. So that our import so that 80% of import to Ukraine is done by road transport. So that's why road connection, in particular road connection with Poland, is something that is extremely important. So that's why all these things, all this list of projects or list of tasks is really comprehensive. And we already do a lot, but of course, so that somewhere we have, let's say, better prospects. It was easier to do with Romania because of readiness of infrastructure. What we discovered with Poland, for example, so that's in railway sector. So that the problem is not only the difference of gauges, so like 1520 or 1435, but the, let's say, invisible commercial China wall on these deliveries, on using railways for delivering goods from Ukraine to the EU through Poland. So because our railway was oriented only on seaports, and it was really efficient in terms of delivering grain, iron ore, and other commodities to seaports, and that's why it's easier with Romania, because it's like shoulder on this. But with Poland, we discovered that PKP and Ukrzaliznytsia, they are neighbors who never met each other, so that they just discovered, oh, so we are neighbors. Yeah. Yeah.
What those firms are.
So it's like Polish railway and Ukrainian railway. So that's sorry for this. Just jumped into regional reality. So you see, the Three Seas is alive in terms of this daily discussion on infrastructural projects in the region.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience? Well, okay. I'll
I
jump.
would like to add on that actually the border management and control system, I think the tender was organized several years ago, but it's not still implemented, the Go-Swift system, I mean, which would facilitate the transactions. But I think also that we have quite a lot of administrative burden to sort out, so that we wouldn't end up in building new infrastructure and only gaining the minutes in the transport or hours in the transport, which we could have otherwise simply arranged by, I mean, agreeing that we operate as one. This is very typical of a Free Seas country, that you have lines which take your goods outside of the region, but not within the region.
Yeah, this is, thank you for this, because sorry for interrupting, just like, when the time is over, you just discover you have energy to talk, yeah, so. So I think that this is one of the unique features that was discovered and highlighted in last 2 years in the region. Because the biggest problem is that so for last 20 years, we trained ourselves to talk to the very global level, at least to Brussels or to Washington or to IFIs, and not to talk to each other. And this is what was discovered in the first day of war, that we discovered that we used to talk on railway and connectivity with Brussels, but not with Poland, and it created a problem we still didn't fix. So it's both regulatory, it's commercial, it's infrastructural, etc. So that's why this is really now, it's a really unique time to understand that the region should be really intra-oriented. And this is very sensitive, because you know that in the EU it's like always like a competition between national level and supranational level, and it's like part of political debate. But the task for us is just to combine it, instead of competition, to create some kind of cohesion of these driving forces. And this is something what I've been talking about, the long-term trust to the region. So if we will manage to organize this dialogue between governments, companies on national level with involvement of supranational level like the EU, then Free Seas will be alive by itself, with no additional push, with no additional promotion. Yeah, thank you.
And the special notion to ION, digital interconnectivity is there from the Ukrainian side. The others need to plug in and play, basically.
John, if I can add, let's remember the role of the private sector here. And the private sector is absolutely crucial, that we see that public-private partnerships are extremely important. In terms of projects, we look at everything from enhancing further digitalization. Ukraine is resilient, powered by digitalization. We talked about how we've raised $350 million. We've put $50 million to work already this year in increasing R&D in Ukraine, creating jobs. It's become a hard currency lifeline, IT industry. Even today, we announced an investment in a woman-led, startup, woman-led later stage IT company out of Zhytomyr, which is doing incredible things in terms of their platform for marketing within the pharma industry. So look, I would say this is that there are so many opportunities. Telecom, we see telecom infrastructure, which those opportunities are there now. That's dispersed infrastructure. It's not one plant that may go down. It is thousands of base stations throughout the country. That is an opportunity now. That is a cross-border opportunity. It's bolt and build acquisitions. It's companies who want to expand from Romania, Bulgaria, Poland into Ukraine. It's looking from a long-term perspective that ultimately, Poland has been the tiger of Europe. And you bring that whole Three Seas initiative together with Ukraine and Moldova, and you essentially lock in tiger status for decades to come. Not only looking outward from the region, but also in the, at this point, it's a over 400 billion rebuild, but we understand that it will be close to 1 trillion, and that's a real opportunity.
May I? Two points. I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more with you. First of all, war turned out that that infrastructure is absolutely necessary to help, and also is necessary for the business, and especially land transport, as it was mentioned, and it's railway and roads, both railways and roads. I would add to this also the network and connectivity, high-speed connectivity, because it's all about data right now, and we have a chance to have a great connectivity within the region and with the entire world, and also right now it is one of the point, the must-be point in terms of investors. I mean, the biggest investors, they are looking for stable energy sources, green energy. That is the name of the game right now. Plus, of course, the high-speed networks. And I think when we combine it with the infrastructure, I mean roads, northeast and east-west, we have, I think, a region for the future investments, and with the great location in Europe and in this part of world. So
Green energy,
very
by the way, is
optimistic.
also, I understand, one of the government's major themes, because diversity of the green energy as it has by the nature is also very good for safety. So I would advise all of the region to make sure that our energy production is no more concentrated like it used to be in 20th century. And indeed, Ukraine, again, can carry the flag here.
So I think that we met last time in Tatra summit in Slovakia, and there was a discussion in Austria, for example. There is like necessity for renewables, but lack of free land for these like plots for placement of this renewable generation. So it's Ukraine is absolutely natural in this, and when especially when we are already integrated into electricity system of the European Union. So that's why that these elements are growing quite fast, and they're absolutely natural. So that, but we see that this growth is under pressure of Russian war, Russian aggression. Yeah.
Let's also see that, I mean, what kind of guarantees for the first and fast investors there will be. I mean, Three Seas by nature is also multilateral, but we've heard also from Michael Gahler, for example, that German government is considering kind of guarantees for those who are the early investors, considering the security situation. And I think we should somehow try to also provide not only the Three Seas fund, but Three Seas guarantee fund, something similar, involving more donors to it. It's very valuable help right now, then we can start moving right now.
Why don't you explain what you mean by the guarantee fund?
I mean, if you now invest, then there is a considerably higher risk than in a normal world
War risk.
that the rocket will hit
Yes,
you.
exactly.
Despite that Ukrainian air defense is doing fantastic job, is getting better and better, but there is no getting away from the fact that businesses globally and money globally thinks that even in Tallinn a rocket might hit, then, I mean, let alone Ukraine. And for that, to cover that risk, some kind of guarantee funds need to be arranged.
This is something that important, but I hope that it will be important like temporarily. So that I think that the biggest problem is that if we will wait to the situation when the risks will be bearable in terms of pricing or in terms of like protecting from physical risks, it will be unnecessary pause that will result in like decades of delay in future. So that's why we hope that what is now it is important to de-risk investments in Ukraine in terms of security risks and war risks, and also affordability of price, because money are quite expensive now globally in the world. So, and for Ukraine with higher risks, of course, the price is even higher. So, and for last year, we did quite a lot in terms of ensuring these kind of investments. As You mentioned the German initiatives. We have 14 states that said that their national investments to Ukraine will be insured. So that France has did it, this UK and the United States. So we have at least 14 states dealing with Polish KUKE, so that has new mandate, modified legislation that provides them an opportunity to insure also the third state investments which use like Polish equipment or Polish.
KUKA is Polish ECA.
Yes, yes, but it's not only, so it's about investments. It's like covering investment risks for investments, not only exporting products. Even Ukrainian Export Credit Agency has modified mandates, so we can insure the war risks for investments in Ukraine by domestic companies. We also have, let's say, resume in private insurance markets. So that's starting from, I think that first week of January, we have new insurance policy, we call it Unity, that covers war risks for vessels moving Ukrainian territorial waters. And the price now, so with introduction of this insurance policy, the price for insurance for vessels in Ukrainian territorial waters in Black Sea is like a pre-war level. It's absolutely affordable in terms of pricing. So insurance is turning back slowly, but it requires, particularly now, the public support. So support of government, support of international institutions. And we hope that Ukraine facility, so that the instrument which is based on each EU member state model of resilience and recovery facilities, so it will, for Ukraine, contain investment pillar, which is exactly the guarantee fund for investment. So this mechanics is important now, and if individual states will, or within Three Seas initiative, it will work, then it will be really push for implementation of projects now.
If I may mention SMEs, I mean, Ukraine has fantastic industry, but I mean, its SME sector lags behind. And I think we should put special emphasis on SME development, because this is what makes economies always resilient, that you have 1,000 flowers blooming in smaller towns. And this is something which tends to be overlooked by multilateral cooperation. We shouldn't do so.
And if I have to, I love, the mention about SMEs, because between Horizon's $350 million fund and Western S's $150, $500 million that's going towards SMEs that will catalyze $5 billion. And just to echo what Taras said about essentially not waiting. We can have the discussion, we have to have the discussion about war risk insurance for the larger projects, but in the meantime, it cannot stop investment now. And I'm going to give a very vivid example. Imagine a retailer, one of the investments that we've made, that had 836 stores before the full-fledged invasion. They had 100 stores that were destroyed or in occupied territory. That's 30,000 per store, about $3 million. We dropped down to 636 stores. They have 1,298 stores now. They're opening a store every 17 hours. They've expanded into Romania. They're now expanding quickly in Romania. They're profitable, no debt. Aurora Vasily Tofan, who leads this investment, doing fantastic, growing over 70% a year. We're not waiting. We're not waiting until all of this is discussed and the war risk insurance and that. Those who want to capitalize on the opportunity are doing it now and realizing that Ukraine's cost competitive, the people are incredible. We haven't talked about human capital, but the human capital in Ukraine, can you actually ever even imagine folks who are more determined, strong, resilient, able to deal with whatever comes their way? You want those people working in your company, in your IT company, in your logistics, in your trade, in your energy, in your retail company. And those people are powering these companies that are ultimately the kinds of success stories that we're just going to see more and more of in the years ahead.
I've been told we have to close this down. Mark, I'll give you the last 60 seconds, but Lenna will be signing up new investors in the back of the room.
We're already done, but we're done. We're finished. We've reached our hard cap.
Yeah, just one remark. We started with Credobank. BGK started with Credobank program dedicated for micro, small, and medium companies. Together with European Commission is a program around 20 million euro. So it's not huge, but it's the beginning. And I know from my discussions with entrepreneurs that this level of SMEs is very strong. Of course, they are smaller, but they talk each other. They want to business each other, and in Poland, SMEs is 50% of GDP, so it's a huge power, and they want to participate in this process. So I think this is big thing, and of course, Ukrainian facility that was mentioned. There is in the second pillar is a part of guarantees, but also we have 50 billion of euro there. And February 1st there will be voting, and we hope that Hungary will not block it, as it was on December. So I think this is next concrete program coming from European Union that we can use as a tool to finance some projects.
Thank you all very much, and President Kaljulaidis, thanks for giving us a new breath of impetus when you came in. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.